All right, thank you. We are very excited to be here, and we have an amazing distinguished guest. Usually we're going to start with them, but I want to just get to know the audience first so that we make quality use of this time on the panel. Raise your hand if you're a marketer or involved with growth of some kind. Good portion of the team. And raise your hand if you're a founder. Okay. Raise your hand if you're an investor. Okay. We've got a great mix, and we got a lot of marketers in the room as well. So thank you so much for being here. Very excited to talk about unlocking growth. We're going to talk a little bit about brand. We're going to talk about growth. We're going to talk about community, and we're going to put it all together because we have amazing experience in this panel. So let me start with this. I'm going to ask our distinguished guest to first introduce yourself, talk a little bit about their background and how they ended up in this industry. So Rachel, would you like to start?
Thank you, Gaff, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. I know it's been a busy and packed schedule this week. As you mentioned, I'm CMO of Binance, but I keep being described in press recently as a marketing veteran. So I think I'm aging myself with the 20 years experience I have in kind of working with big global brands, medium-sized brands, and several startups. In 2017, I made the jump into sports and entertainment and joined an agency called Creative Artist Agency. And at that time, it was a lot of brands were coming to us, looking to how they could drive in the fintech, in the crypto space, looking to how they could drive more mainstream awareness and engagement. And it was over that course of the period, and really during COVID in 2021, that I got fully won over by the industry, and this opportunity really to be in a mission-driven industry that has the opportunity to completely redefine financial transactions. And serve someone like me who travels a lot, who always has difficulties with things like bank transfers, to in other markets, allows you that opportunity to, when you can't get banked, be able to have a financial future. So it was that really kind of won me over, and Binance came calling. It's pretty hard to turn down Binance, given what they've achieved over the last 7 years. So now I'm responsible for driving their global marketing and regional opportunities.
Thank you for being here. All right, Ben.
Hello, thank you for joining us. So I'm the CMO of CoinShares, which is the European leading investment company specialized in digital assets. We do ETFs and ETP, especially in crypto since 2013. We do hedge fund and capital markets, so really a TradFi hybrid with crypto. And previously I was the CMO of Ledger, so the hardware wallet company. And my background is quite similar to yours because I come from the creative agency world, but I always loved tech. I was in the Linux users group of my hometown. When I was a teenager, I was developing in C and so on. So I would say I am at the intersection of tech and brand and social sciences and humanities, which is, I think, something that is really lacking in this industry, where in general, this is an industry of engineers that make engineers' product for engineers. So my job is how do we make this much more emotional? How do we make this much more clear as a value proposition for the users, the builders, the developers, and so on? Yeah.
And we have a slightly different experience here, but Bilal?
Pretty different, yeah. So thanks again for Sui for putting such an amazing event together. So I'm Bilal, I'm 32 years old. I'm originally a French scientist. Actually, right now, I am managing PyratzLabs, which is the biggest incubator in France. We have 1,000 meters square of office where we try to federate, animate the ecosystem. We're also the most active investor here in France. We're with more than 31 investments. And we also have a school called the Blockchain Business School where we try to educate and foster adoption of crypto and blockchain use cases. I bumped into crypto. So I was an entrepreneur before PyratzLabs. I built and sold a fintech company. And we actually, in the end, implemented the brick of blockchain technology to certify the shareholder registry. Even though it was a financial reporting tool, we added some features, and notably a blockchain feature. And that's a little bit how I bumped into the rabbit hole, like you say. I was really passionate about the technology, the digital ownership, the decentralization, the transactional aspects. And I felt it was, for an entrepreneur, a very good technology trend where I could participate right from the beginning to push the boundaries with the rest of the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for being here, all of you. So I'm going to start with an open question to anyone on the panel first. Marketing is really about knowing your audience, your users, your customers. We say marketing is about the audience. and then knowing what the magic is in the product or service, and then really connecting the two. I think there's like this question in the digital blockchain crypto space: is the audience different than when we consider traditional technology? And in your experience, how so? Open to any of three of you.
I let the marketing expert start.
Okay, I can take it. So I wouldn't say what is very different in Web3, crypto, and so on is that you have so many different stakeholders. So when you're communicating both to the developers, the builders, the scientists, the entrepreneurs. You are as well communicating to the potential users, the token holders. So as a marketer, I think if you really want to know your audience, you need to know all your stakeholders and all the potential incentives you need to provide to them. And so it's much more complete as the traditional marketer, where you have the guy in charge of the investor relations in a corporate company, the one in charge of the marketing, the one in charge of, I don't know, the developer relations. A good CMO, I think, in Web3 is a jack of all trades, able to do all those jobs. And if you really know each of these stakeholders, you're able to provide the right incentive, the right tool to empower them. Because I think what makes Web3 brands very different from the other industries is, in general, we say that a brand is like what people say about you when you're not in the room. And in general, a brand controls 20% of the narrative, and 80% is done by key opinion leaders, UGC, and so on. In crypto and Web3, I would say it's 1% that is controlled by the brand and 99% that is controlled by actually everyone. So how do you make sure that all the stakeholders, they have the right messages, the right tools to really communicate what you want to communicate?
Can I extend that to Rachel and say, do you agree with Ben that the audience is more complex and the role of the CMO in itself is more complex?
I think it's more complex, and I think the speed and pace at which it operates is so much deeper. And one thing, I have several of my marketing team in the audience today, and one thing we talk about is we're so community driven in this industry, but making sure you're actually ahead of the community and serving up, the right products, the right services at the right time that's relevant to them. And the volume of insights and data, this community is, unlike other industries, even if it's luxury like we spoke about earlier, or fast-moving consumer goods, the speed at which you're getting data and how you're digesting it and how you're using it to inform your marketing strategies is critical. So I would argue from that perspective that your social and community teams are the most critical part of the marketing playbook in Web3. Because that's where you detect the opportunity or the problems or the challenges, and you need to be able to be agile and respond to them, but also use those to dictate, the new programs or new campaigns. And, knowing the right incentives, knowing what's really going to help build brand love, because this industry is amazing. Like, the community they're the ultimate cult fans. It's very similar. I see some people in Formula One gear. It's really similar to the cult fans that you have in that world, are what happens in Web3 as well.
Bilal, Rachel talked about the speed of being very different industry. You work with a lot of different projects. Where does the user come in the conversation as they build their tech?
All right, from the beginning, because first, indeed, there is this community aspect that is really central to any project. But I would say it should be central to all the kind of projects, even though they're Web3 or not Web3, because it's very important to iterate with a first community base to try to optimize the product market fit. And I think it's inherent to Web3 because there is this alignment of interests with the token economics or the NFT economics that force the projects to be involved with their community right from the beginning. But actually there is another side of the coin, which is quite hard because since everything becomes public, it's almost like you're managing a public listed company. So whatever information you're communicating, it's very important and it can have impacts more than what you expect. And I've seen it many times. So it also requires a very rigorous approach in the communication. I often say to our portfolio company, never say something you're not sure and try to have the Bored Ape approach. Just communicate when everything is ready.
Rachel, I want to go back to what you said about brand and brand building. So oftentimes in our industry, everything does move really quickly. We start with the users and our audiences, but we start with the text and specs, and we wonder why we're not driving adoption. And then we get to this question of what is the brand? What is the story we're trying to tell? Can you share a little bit about the experience you see? What is brand to you as a leader in your space? And how should builders be thinking about brand?
This is a really tough question because it's such a fine balance, like to strike the balance between building brand equity and driving user growth in an industry that is so focused on growth, is the constant conundrum that we have, within Binance. It's really balancing that. I would say that, central to it is, ultimately the platform within which this industry was originally built was one of the strongest brand stories that you could have. And I feel as we've grown and we've scaled, and we've turned into a trillion cap industry, we've maybe lost a little bit of sight of that original narrative. And actually, as we look at that narrative, that's what's ultimately it's going to be translating it and explaining it in new ways, but what's going to bring the next cohort of users into the Web3 space is educating around what is a very worthy mission. But that's gotten diluted, as there's so many messages and it's so saturated in the marketplace. For us at Binance, we focus, and in the bear and coming into the spring, we're really focusing aggressively on our existing users. And I say that because they're your best marketing tools. They're your ambassadors that drive the most advocacy. And if you keep the core happy, and use them to translate stories and use them to be able to bring in those new users, it's the most powerful. It's very similar in ways, and people may laugh, but into the beauty industry in terms of how it works, the speed of that and the testimonials. That's what really brings in more. It's why the community and KOLs, are so important. So for me, I think that's, a critical part of as you're building brand equity is focusing on your existing users, ensuring you're giving them what they need, what they want, and then using that as a way to educate yourself on what else you can do to bring in, the broader cohorts that are going to be important to the sustainability of this business in the long term.
Just to extend that question to Ben, in your experience today or in your previous life as Ledger, where does brand fit in?
This is a very good question because when I look at the industry, I feel that I have the impression that a lot of projects are not really considering the importance of building a brand. What is really a brand? What makes, because a brand is this emotional touch you can have on top of a product. And I do remember when, before joining Ledger, actually I was helping them on their narrative for the Series B, and we were looking at what makes Ledger very unique if you compare them to other products. Of course, you could say this is security, but security is not so unique. And in general, the way you build a brand is you start with a feature, then you add a rational benefit on top of this feature, then an emotional benefit, and then the end benefit. But you need to start with what is the singularity of the feature, the singularity of the brand and the product. And what made Ledger very unique at this moment was if Ledger collapses, if Ledger fails, you still own your coins, which is something very strong if you really think about it. You don't have any security company in the world that could really offer this. So we started with this idea, which of course brings this emotional and benefit of resilience, and then it brought the tagline which became resilience by design, Ledger resilience by design, because it's something that was at the core of the value proposition of the product. And then, and this is linking to your first question about the audience, then we discovered that, we discussed with the audience, and we discovered the number one reason people didn't want to use Ledger was very simple. They thought it was too complex to them. They were not confident using this product. And so we then decided to move the brand to another tagline and another, I would say, brand vision and product vision, which was trust yourself. Because you need to give the tools to people to really trust themselves to use this product. So really, as a founder, as a builder, you really should think about what is the benefit of my product, of my project. Because if I have to be honest, I've been to many projects for the last 2 days. And I only see features. You want to go faster, you want to go, I don't know, to be more decentralized, but I don't get the benefit for the end user or the developer. So we really need to start thinking of the user and the benefit for them.
Bilal, maybe an extension to you. You work with a lot of projects. Is that how most of them ask questions in terms of how should I be building my brand? How do I get the message out in terms of the benefits?
The truth is that entrepreneurship is such a hard job that nobody really master all the subjects. I often say just be an expert in one, that's already great. So a lot of people don't grasp the importance of branding. For their, how can I say, to go in their sense, for the people who don't necessarily understand this important, it was not necessarily easy to implement proper brand building, because branding is it's not just beautiful images. It's like the right messages. It's like the right value proposition. And and there is the promise and the reality. So then the user journey needs to be at the level of the branding in order to have the stickiness. So it was really hard because abstraction of wallets just came in, real-time transactions, fast finality is just coming in and is advocating for this promise. One of the first projects we've done at PyratzLabs is a video game, maybe you've heard about it, it's called Dogami. It's like a remake of Tamagotchi that is played in 80 countries now. And right from the beginning, we wanted to build an IP. And you know, an IP, everybody wants to build an IP, but your IP is worthless until someone else wants to pay for it. So how do you make someone else pay for it? And right from the beginning, we worked with some amazing branding people. One of the co-founders of Dogami, late co-founder Chris, is the chief branding officer. And we are trying to implement all this codification that Benoit was telling about to create proper stickiness. So now that I've discovered the value by doing it myself, again, I'm not a marketer, so it was the first time I do it. And it was passionating because it brings a lot of creativity, gamification, and it also increases, how can I say, the legitimacy of the project. And that's very important in such a competitive space as we are today.
I have a follow-up question. Thank you for that, for Rachel, on everything the panelists said. When we think about the user adoption and growth that you talked about, when we talk about everything that's said here, when you're brand building, how much do you think inwardly versus the competitor set, and how you differentiate? How much in your brand building efforts do you think about your competitors versus what Binance?
I think we're at a stage though our industry is so nascent. It's what's good for Binance, what's good for Coinbase, is good for the industry. Because ultimately, we're celebrating what is the growth of this industry and helping. We're still so nascent. We've only scratched the surface. If we think about it, we're at 8 to 10% penetration. So as we look, I would say that we're in a very lucky position being the largest and having, 185 million users. We can talk a lot about trust. We can talk a lot about being user first and how we use that to bring that back. But being in that position of having to defend that is probably the biggest brand challenge that we have. And I would argue as a brand, and as a business over the last year, we've probably taken some of the biggest hits. But ultimately, that's going to be good for the industry because it's the necessary, journeys that we need to go on to get into a position where we're driving more user safety and more user security. So, of course, we think about competitors, but internally in our marketing teams, we celebrate when we see good work and good brand building, from big, small, and medium-sized projects, because it helps us understand how we can be better and different ways in which, depending on the engagement of that, how we can, drive more ultimate conversion in the industry. So yeah, it's a critical part, but I don't think we don't allow it hold us back, because I think competitors are healthy to be to pay attention to, but not to be obsessed by. Because to your point, it has to be about what is the value proposition of you and why are you differentiated? And you can't always be everything to everyone. You need to identify who your audience is and how you define what your go-to-market is around them.
Follow-up question to that. How do you think of your marketing strategy? Is branding separate from user acquisition in your resourcing and strategy? Are they integrated?
It's fully integrated at the moment. So I think the word brand in our industry is very misunderstood. And I think it's seen as this, I would argue founders are some of the best marketeers to work with. They just don't always know how to translate themselves, because they're focused on, they've built something that's based around functional needs where, going back to what Benoit was talking about, there has to be a higher purpose. There has to be a reason to believe in this brand. That's ultimately what builds a sustainable business. We don't go back to brands just because of the function. We go back because we're engaged with it and we've got love for it. I would, I'm after forgetting the end of the question there. Sorry,
you
I talk a lot. I'm Irish, so.
I think you answered it. I think you started with saying, yes, it's integrated. You don't think
it's
of it
fully
as a part.
integrated. So we like to think about it, whether it be a product campaign that we're talking about, or whether it be, a gaming tournament, or whether it be, an Easter egg or Ramadan activation. We like to always think about, define who's the audience, what's the story we're telling, is it authentic, and how do we use all of the different levers that you have in our marketing playbook to ensure we're meeting users where they are in a different way. So.
Same question for you, Ben and Bilal. Do you think in your marketing strategy and your planning, when you do resourcing and strategic thinking, is branding and user acquisition integrated, or are they separate? How do you think about these things?
I agree with you. I think for people in this industry, brand is a bad one. Like it's just spending crazy money in crazy, unuseful and inefficient project, which is absolutely not the case. The brand is just the expression of what is your company and what is the vision of the company. So it should be everywhere and translated in every marketing activations, every project, everything. It's a way. It's even a tool to choose to do some things or not some things, even product things. I mean, the brand should be in your product. So to me, it's definitely integrated. And even the question between growth and community, these are to me the two faces of the same coins. It's you should put the brand at the core of everything you do. Same for the community. The community, as you mentioned, are the ambassadors of the brand. To me, crypto is like a big religion with a lot of different cults. The question, and one of the best brands in the world was the Catholic Church, amazing logo with the cross, amazing spokesperson, and so on. So you should think like that about your brand, your foundations, and so on. So, and you need a lot of ambassadors, a lot of priests. So make sure that your message and your brand is clear.
That is a brilliant analogy.
They definitely merge in the sense that both costs gets into the customer acquisition cost. So it's very important. But I would add that I think branding is more useful for retention than necessarily acquisition. The value proposition hooks someone, but many people can have the same or very similar value proposition. Why would he stay? He would stay because he shares the same value, because he understands the same vision, and he wants to get to the same place, and he likes the other community member. And only branding creates this stickiness.
I would add something, because I think, to be honest, Binance is, to me, a very interesting brand, because if you want to be honest with ourselves, a lot of exchanges are like a sea of sameness. They have the same products and so on. But what makes this, I would say, the power of Binance is this top-of-mind brand. They are everywhere. They are in the smallest event everywhere in the world, but as well you can see them on TV. So it's, how do you make sure that when people think, okay, I want to buy crypto, Binance is the first brand. It's the same for your projects. Okay, I want to play to earn. What is the number one project, number one gaming brand that you're thinking of? And this is where brand as well is very useful as well to decrease your growth budget. The stronger is the brand, the less you need to spend on growth.
I would like to add something very important, because branding has also a very particular component. I think, and when you talked about Binance, it reminds me that it's also the CEO. The CEO needs to incarnate the brand, and he needs to be the first community member, and he needs to be accessible, so that he can sweat the vision, and only by having a very strong leader, really the brand takes its all its whole shape.
Thank you so much for that. It looks like we're getting the signal that we're pretty much out of time. Let me close with this. Time's gone really fast. I can't believe that's been 25, 30 minutes already. What tip? We have a lot of builders in the audience. We have a lot of builders at the conference here at Sui Basecamp. From your perspective, let's start with Bilal and we'll end with Rachel. What one tip would you give advice for a new project when it comes to building community, unlocking growth, or brand building?
Well, I will advocate for myself basically, but ask for help and don't and share the value, because you will only get the help you want if the interests are aligned. And often when I see entrepreneurs and I told them, okay, if you want, you can join our accelerator program, our studio program, whatever, we can support you. And obviously our business model is get some equity and hopefully get an upside on the equity. And most of the founders, they think equity is only something that goes down. Actually, it's dynamic. The more you reach milestones, the more with stocks, with someone leaving, you can top up your equity. Some founders have more equity at the end than they have at the beginning because they've been overperforming. So don't hesitate to share the value because it's the only way to get proper support.
Ben?
I would say two things. I would think your strategy should be, you have two legs on your strategy. One is education. This is a very complex industry, so educate, create the right content to educate, make sure that your developers, the builders, your users have the right messages to educate as well their own community. And the second one is what we call excess share of voice. One of the big fights right now is how do you get the share of mind of people because they want to spend time on your project, on your game, on your service, I don't know. And to generate this excess share of voice, you should always think, okay, what is new in what I'm doing? What is the right benefit to make sure that you have a lot of news and things like that?
I'm going to echo what both of you said in terms of knowing your value and allowing others to participate in your value, is critical, and educating individuals on the benefits, that's so important. But if you break it down to something more tactical, given a lot of projects have very limited budgets, limited resources, and what we've seen recently with the non-meme projects, and the coins is that focus on gamification. Like that's such a simple way in to bringing, everyone loves a game. And being able to use points, referral, quests as a way to show your value and educate is a very simple, tactical way to help grow a community at scale. And I think it's something that's used but is not utilized enough. And I would argue that it's actually, if we look back, it's the Web 2 brands that perfected this. So studying Web 2 brands and understanding how they did it to build their brand and show their value is going to be critical, for projects that are with limited resources trying to have a big impact.
Often people try to reinvent the wheel, and there is so much expertise in strategizing marketing. And I would say that gamification should be a market practice now. It's not something that you should consider doing. You should do it.
Amazing. Thank you for all your insights and your time with us today. Those are great tips, and hopefully this was helpful for the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.